All right, so I've been saying this, man. I just was searching for articles, had a little bit of free time to cut a video, man. So thumbs up the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. And this is, I just seen this article, man, and it just made a lot of sense. It's what I've been saying, and I think he was able to, you know, basically put it in an article form. What I've been saying, but it says Cade Cunningham recent struggles makes Pistons trade deadline need obvious. So we've had so many people who have pretty much pushed back to what I've said the Pistons needed. Oh, look at the record, they're doing good, and this, and like I said, a lot of people was just in the moment. Um, in life, you can't always live in the moment. You rarely get a chance to live in the moment. You have to be prepared to see into the future. And sometimes you say, "Oh, it's not a problem right now," and down the road, you should have foreseen it, and it became a problem. And right now, the Pistons have two glaring needs. Statistically, y'all love losing statistics. Look at this man arm scratched up and shit. He said Detroit Pistons continue to dominate the Eastern Conference, maintaining a healthy lead at the halfway mark of the season. Winning three straight and six out of their seven, the Pistons have every right to feel good about their chance this season. Yet, a closer look at Detroit and Cade Cunningham, specifically, or whatever, shows a very clear need to trade for a trade deadline upgrade. It would be a costly mistake for GM Trajan Langdon to be complacent and stand pat between now and February 5th. For whatever reason, I thought it was the 6th, but it is the 5th. Cade Cunningham is in the midst of his worst slump of the season. The last three, since he returned from a wrist injury, the guard he shot 27.6% from the field, 14 points per game. As a result, the Pistons had 110.2, 111.6, and 114.3 offensive. I don't get into none of that bullshit, right? So excuse my language. But my thing is this. We know he in the slump because he injured. I mean, that's evident. He's not slumping because of anything else. He's literally injured right now. But a lot of their scoring is predicated on him, and then it's distributed to it can be anybody night. And that's a problem because one of the guys that's supposed to be, two of the guys that's really supposed to be picking up the slack, Jay Ivy and Karis LeVert. Ivy just ain't got the opportunity to pick up the slack. I don't, whatever reason. And Karis LeVert, he just been a flop. Karis LeVert has been a major flop. Okay. So when we having these conversations, man, they just, right now, really Duncan Robinson is doing his thing. Javonte Green is doing their thing, but they really need an alpha scorer. And I've been saying it time and time again. They need an alpha scorer. They need an alpha scorer. They need somebody that can come in and flat out get them 20 to 25 plus points a night. Cade Cunningham, he has to do too much. And I think people just think, oh, they winning right now in the playoff series. It shouldn't come down to him or we don't know. And Duran has been a pleasant surprise scoring wise. You can't count on Tobias. Asar is, not a really natural scorer. Dennis Jenkins, Javonte Green, they've picked it up. But for the most part, you need that proven commodity where teams, when they play him one-on-one and they pack it on Cade and they got to pack the paint on Duran, you need somebody else that other than that can shoot that three, somebody that can just a professional bucket getter. And there's so many of them out there for the Lowski, right? Pistons offense isn't as good enough to win a title, and trade deadline can fix that. But 2 weeks into the trade deadline, the Pistons have an excellent opportunity. They need more shot creators, shot makers in rotation. Cunningham needs more space to operate and requires more shooting. While it's obvious positives that the Pistons can win when their offense isn't humming, this slump should raise an alarm bells. And Detroit have an elite defense like Detroit is, but you can't win a championship in the NBA without at least being above average on both ends of the floor. The team limits offensive ceiling, especially when Cunningham's shot isn't falling, will prevent them from winning the title. And I think people don't understand this paragraph right here. It says Detroit is overly reliant on Cunningham's offensively, making them easier team to guard at the highest level. With limits of spacing around him, Cunningham can understandably struggle with efficiency. I don't really see his struggle really being due to him being so he's injured, obviously. But the great thing about him, he can affect the game with his passing. So people making it seem like, oh, it's just a slump. No, he's obviously injured. He wasn't low managing. He's injured. As the roster is clearly constructed, the Pistons don't have enough elite shooters outside of Duncan Robinson. And Robinson comes with significant defensive, and he's been a lot better defensively. He's been a lot. My bad. I didn't mean to do that. I don't know how that happened. But real quick, well, I know how it happened. He's been a lot better. He's been a lot better defensively. That's a fact. He's been significantly better defensively. But when we started to look up this roster, Javonte Green is solid at shooting threes. Dennis Jenkins is solid at shooting threes. Beef Stew has been a better shooter. Sasser, when he get a chance, he's a good shooter. And, but, when you start to kind of, creep over and start to, talk a little bit more about it, the guys that you need, basically what they're saying is this. The guys that you need to shoot and shoot at a high level, Jaden Ivey not playing enough, right? But Asar Thompson and Ron Hollins, them still not taking that jump shooting wise is what's holding them back. Ivy not playing a bunch of minutes, and also Karis LeVert being a flat-out dud so far. Had that been to kill, Alexander Walker was averaging over 20 points a game for the Atlanta Hawks in the breakout season. It would be no question. They don't really have a definitive starting two guard. And also, once you kind of look at it as well, too, they really don't have that guy off the bench that can get a bucket. That can be Ivy, but we haven't seen him get that opportunity. It's supposed to be Karis LeVert. It also could be Sasser and Dennis Jenkins. Let's just say they one solid player. You need that other guy off the bench that can really get you a bucket. That was supposed to be Karis LeVert, and also swing into the starting lineup if need be. They don't really have a starting two guard that can score. And that's the problem. So it's still relying on Cade getting a bucket. He need help. So as the roster is currently constructed, this type of player will obviously require significant assets. The Pistons should not be willing to part ways with the likes of Ivy, Karis LeVert, Ron Holland to make salaries work. If need. To be honest with you, they should be part ways with Jaden Ivey. If his minutes is not going to tick up, you might as well allow him to go. Now, the thing about it is they name guys like Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr. It doesn't have to be that. Let me explain that once again. It doesn't have to be guys of that significant nature. They just, you could say from Tobias Harris' position, they need better shooting from that position. I concur. It doesn't have to be a Trey Murphy. It doesn't have to be a Lauri Markkanen or Jaren Jackson. It doesn't have to be those guys. You know what I'm saying? You just need a guy that can come in there and man that position and catch and shoot. As far as guys that's available, I'm not pretty much sure. Michael Porter Jr. wouldn't cost you that much. Keegan Murray will cost you a lot of money. I mean, that's an alternative to Trey Murphy. I think he's gonna be hard to get, but just a guy like Michael Porter Jr. got him for another year. He can help, but they don't necessarily need that guy to be at the 4 position. When you start to look outside that 4 position and guys they looking to get rid of, guys like perhaps like a James Harden they could dump, but they surge. I'm not saying you should get James Harden. When you start looking at a guy, you start looking at guys like Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. Maybe it's not working in Atlanta with McCollum. I'm hearing that his usage is too high, but if he's messing up in Atlanta, I don't want him to be here. There's a number of guys. I mean, you go to the Brooklyn Nets roster, Cam Thomas, you can bring him off the bench. You probably can get him for a little bit of nothing. You probably get him for a little bit of nothing. So when you start talking about guys like that can help you out, shooting. I mean, Anthony Simons is just riding on the Boston Celtics bench. Maybe you could bring him in as a guy that can play next to Cade Cunningham. You start talking about guys like Jeremy Grant that you can get for the low ski at that four position. Um, when you just start going around looking at, per se, bad, you start looking at, bad rosters or people that's looking to get certain things off. It was talks about Benedict Mathurin, talks about Kobe White getting traded. Uh, if you just want to look in the Western Conference, you look at the Pelicans, you see what they got going on. Obviously, Trey Murphy is the guy. Maybe a guy like DeJounte Murray, he might be injured. A guy like DeJounte Murray would be great in the backcourt with Cade Cunningham. Anybody's great with Cade Cunningham, to be honest. When you look at the Dallas Mavericks roster, maybe getting a guy like Clay, maybe a change of scenery for a guy like Klay Thompson. Um, you know, do you look at a guy like Max Christie? Can you get him another guy that can provide some space? When you start looking at the Memphis Grizzlies roster, I'm just going through. Um, Pretty much not much there that I know of, honestly. You start looking at Portland; they're a young team on the come up. Um, do you look at to bring Drew Holiday in? Aggressive guy. I don't know what's going on with Drew Holiday. Is he injured? Is he playing? So he's playing because he didn't play Sunday. When you start looking at a guy like Drew Holiday, you know what I mean? You know, the salary, but you're not looking to keep him long term. That might be a good fit. A guy that can take the ball out of Cade Cunningham's hand. So yeah, you look at a guy like him, Jeremy Grant. I think Portland will be willing to, split with guys like that. Um, so yeah, when you start to take a deep dive and you look, man, they need somebody they don't need per se nobody at the four. They can use another really good shooter, at the guard position. But to be honest, guys like Monk, Levine, Bridges, the one in Orlando. When you start just talking about some of the guys like Keegan Murray, Trey Murphy, all those are good picks, but they just need somebody that can get them 20 to 25 plus points a night. I think Levine would be a great fit. They got Duncan Robinson playing defense. That will be a great fit. Also, because they probably be willing to give you a guy like Jeremy Grant. The thing about it is we need the Jeremy Grant that was in Denver that defend and shoot the three. And also it's going to be some times where he get the green light that Tobias Harris got, or he get a matchup on Sam Hauser or matchup on Peyton Pritchard where he got to kill it. I think we talking about some lower level. You don't have to give up a ton of assets. I mean, I think they give you DeRozan, Levine. I think Malik Monk might cost you a little bit much. I think you can get Cam Thomas for a little bit of nothing and plug him on your bench. But I feel like you got two guys in Sasser and Jenkins like them. You can get MPJ. Match the salaries up with Ivy and Tobias and throw a first round pick in there. I think you could turn around and get a guy, also like a Levine or Monk. I think Monk is a better defender. You can do that with Monk and bring those guys in, and I think you got two deadly scorers there. You can bring Monk off the bench. That's what I would do personally. But if you talking about doing it big, Trey Murphy, and from a guard position, I don't really think you want to do it big. Honestly, I don't think you want to jive LaMelo Ball from the guard position out of the guys that's available. I don't think you really want to do it big from that perspective. If you're gonna do it big, it's marketing, it's Keegan Murray, it's Trey Murphy, it's guys like that. If a healthy Anthony Davis, I think that's off the table. I think Giannis. I think if you're doing it big, you're gonna do it big in that category. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a Draymond of Golden State blow it up, but I'm thinking, so many value deals at the guard position. I think, people are going to be saying, damn, this is crazy. If I'm going to do it big, I'm probably going to try to get Austin Reeves for the Lakers, but they're going to want Jalen Duren, so that ain't happening. So if I'm doing it big, maybe I look out there in the Clippers, and maybe the Clippers figure out, and they're making a run. They ain't too far out the playoffs, so the Clippers ain't going to be looking to sell in the new stadium. But maybe look at a guy like John Collins. Sheesh. That's pretty much it. Bogdan Bojanovic will be another good pick. Maybe if I can get Collins or Bojanovic out of there or both, if I get Bojanovic out of there, that'd be a great fit for the Pistons, in my opinion. So they got a bunch of value picks where you don't have to go out there and be extremely, expensive with it. They got a lot of good picks that they can do. So I think shooting has to improve and they need a scorer. So I feel they need a shooter and they need a scorer. I think if they can get a guy, shoot another a 3-and-D guy, like Duncan Robinson, and then they can get a guy like Monk or Levine that can flat out score. That'd be perfect. If you can get Trey Murphy and you can get Herb Jones and the Alvarado kid, that'd be pretty good too. So we'll see what happens. Check out Detroit Pistons Talk playlist. Hit the link tree. Find me on X, Facebook, Kick, Twitch, Instagram, Spotify, Anchor, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Hit the link tree. It's the first link in the description. Peace.